Let's return now to the mid-year budget update. Joining me is Warren Hogan, Economic Advisor at Judo Bank. Warren, thank you as always for your time. Let's start with your overall assessment of the mid-year budget update. No real budget improvement despite a surge in revenue.
Yeah, good afternoon, Kieran. I think that's probably the most disappointing thing is all of the improvement in the budget that's come from a stronger economy has been rolled back into the economy through new spending measures, essentially, some of which we don't know are yet to be announced, presumably the pre-budget war chest. But we saw a $48 billion improvement in the underlying budget over the 4 years, and essentially that ended up only being a $2 billion improvement. So no budget repair at all going on here. And I suppose ahead of an election, while we've still got an economy that's recovering, I suppose that was to be expected.
On the pre-election war chest, I guess it leaves open the option of going to an election in March, but nothing locking that in either, I suppose, as well. But there is quite a bit there in the decisions taken, not yet announced.
Yeah, and presumably they have a pretty good idea of what they are because it's quite detailed from year to year, the total spend that they're expecting to do. It's about $4 or $5 billion over the next few years. So they've got a fair bit. And of course, they can do more if they feel they need to. I think the economy is going to continue to surprise on the upside over the next year, if not longer, and their budget will continue to improve. So I don't think there'll be anything holding either side of politics back from spending more than that $16 billion in the next 6 months.
On the unemployment number, or the jobs growth, it really stole the show in many respects, didn't it? I know we got the MyEFO, but if you look at that number, 366,000 jobs created in November.
Yeah, we're getting pretty good at these lockdowns here in Australia. We've just essentially got all the way back to where we were pre the Delta lockdown in terms of employment, unemployment, hours worked, which is a great sort of proxy for economic activity. And participation's back to where it was before. So we've just, it's like Delta never happened in the terms of the labour market. But really, what it's highlighting is the strong momentum the economy's got now, which, we may need if the current sort of issues around Omicron get worse. Or alternatively, if we don't have any sort of major health challenges, we're going to be taking a lot of momentum, a lot of confidence into 2022. It's going to be a strong year for the economy and I think stronger than what the government's expecting and certainly stronger than what the RBA is expecting.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we've got a couple of different scenarios in the mid-year budget update. Very hard to make assumptions at the best of times as to where economies and budgets will be in 3 or 4 years, but even more so during a pandemic, Warren.
Yeah, no, the scenario sort of stress tests, if you will, that they do, I think are just sort of good housekeeping. The reality is the uncertainty sits in the economy right now. And I think the main one, which neither the government in their forecast that they've got in the mid-year update or the Reserve Bank, and the Governor of the Reserve Bank did speak today, are looking at is inflation. Inflation is rising at the highest rate in 30 years in most advanced economies around the world. And yet our central bank and our government is expecting inflation to remain at a very modest and low rate for the next few years. And I think that's where the real surprise is. And given the employment numbers, I think we're going to see a lot more action on the wages front. I think we're going to see the demand for labour really pressure the labour market, and workers will be asking for higher wages, whether that's through industrial disputes, through strike action, or just through going to the next job. So I think that's where the real risk is, that we get more inflation in this country, and that'll ultimately lead to higher interest rates at some stage.
So if just to pick up on one of the points you said there on inflation, the US Fed signalling potential rate hikes, our central bank today signalling that, more of the same, that rates will remain low for the foreseeable future.
The contrast is really becoming quite stark now. The Fed has started to change its tune in the last 6 weeks around inflation. They were, for most of the last 6 months, describing it as transitory. They're now clearly signalling rate hikes next year, which just a few months ago, no one thought they were going to raise rates next year. So the Fed is going to move. They're going to raise interest rates. And the RBA is telling us they're still not likely to do anything for the next couple of years. Now, if that comes to pass, and I actually doubt it will, but if it does, that's going to put the Aussie dollar under a lot of downward pressure. The Aussie dollar could easily fall below 70 and fall some way. I think the reality of the situation is that we're likely to see a bit more inflation, and the RBA will be forced to follow the Fed, as many central banks around the world are. So I think the Fed this morning has signalled interest rates around the world are going up.
Yeah, and finally, just to, I guess, conclude where we were a bit earlier on that jobs issue, because while the jobs growth is great news, the wages growth obviously much awaited and will also be welcome, but it also means we're running out of workers as well in some sectors.
We are. There's no two ways about it. The closed borders mean that basically half the new workers we need every year are not coming from overseas. Now, we are easing that up, and that'll start to rev up through the course of the year, and the government's signalling that, but it's not going to happen quickly enough. We've got unemployment near 30-year lows, heading for 50-year lows. Participation is already at record highs. So workers are in high demand, they're scarce, and, economics 101, when the demand's bigger than the supply, prices go up.
Warren Hogan, great to get your insights as well today and throughout the year. All the best for Christmas. We'll see you next year.
Thanks, Kieran. All the best to you.